Well, May Day is the perfect time to check in on France's current social and political climate. And for that, we can speak to Renaud Foucart, a senior lecturer in economics at Lancaster University Management School. Good morning and happy May Day.
Good morning.
As we heard in that report, this year the lead up to the holiday was marked by debate over a law the government wants to pass, making it easier for some sectors to work. Can you kind of walk us through what the controversy was?
This is the most meta French debate you can imagine. So, on the 1st of May, on May Day, by law, you are not allowed to go to work unless you're in an essential occupation. And what's a more contentious debate in France than bakeries? So, bakeries have been largely actually open but tolerated in the past until in 2024, famously, some baker chains were fined for allowing their outlets to be open during the day. So this is one, and the other one is also very highly symbolic because Lily of the Valley is a flower that is typically sold by unions and the Communist Party on the 1st of May. And so now you have possibly private companies allowed to sell flowers also. More generally, this is a day which historically has been a major day of demonstration, of showing of strength for unions and all left-wing organizations in France. This has been a day that was also high stake in the previous years because there were several reforms, labor market reforms, and famously pension reforms. But this year, because France is in a limbo, the stakes are perhaps a little bit lower and they go back to debating the basics. Does it still make sense to have this sacred day where labor is not allowed?
And given that the government, they wanted to expand, employees being able to go to work beyond just flower sellers and bakers, but they ultimately backtracked on that. Is that a big victory for unions, or kind of how significant is that?
I think it's significant to show that there is no political majority in France right now. So the government can say whatever it wants. It is now in a de facto coalition with the Social Democrats. And if anything, this 1st of May is kind of a victory lap for them. Because you may remember that in the previous years, every time we talked in France, it was all about this pension reform. And this de facto coalition with the Social Democrat right now has been freezing the pension reform, meaning that until 2028, it will be postponed. And after the presidential election, whoever wins will decide to resume it or to let it go. So this is a year where the unions had quite a few victories to celebrate, but also, of course, there is a lot of political tensions like everywhere else, but there might not be so French political. So, of course, the rise of the cost of living, the oil prices, they have more to do with Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu deciding to bomb Iran than with actual interior domestic issues in France.
I wanted to ask you about oil prices, which you just mentioned, because this week Total Energies announced its first quarter net profit surged by 51%. So they're profiting basically from the crisis in the Middle East. And that sparked a lot of political debate here in France.
A lot of debate. So the key issue is that it's a French company, but most of this profit is made abroad. And so can you sort of tax those windfall profits of Total Energy? But what has been the key focus this week is the fact that there is an open divide between two people, Marine Le Pen, who was been in the previous time the candidate for the far-right National Rally in the presidential election, and Jordan Bardella, who is her in the likely event that on July the 7th, she's found unable to run because of embezzlement of European funds. So typically, Marine Le Pen has been the far-right leader who is also a woman and who is also a relatively progressive social democrat on all economic issues. While on the other side, Jordan Bardella has been showing the views that are much closer to the right and trying to get friends with the leadership of the big French companies. And so he's kind of opposing those windfall tax on Total Energy. So this is wide in the open, and this might be a running question during the presidential election because a lot of the success of Marine Le Pen is that she would speak both to retired people in the South who are kind of anti-migrants but don't want to touch too much about the economy, and people in the North who saw her as a new, almost communist champion fighting for the interests of workers. So if Bardella loses half of this coalition, he might start being in trouble.
And what do you make of that divide between them? I mean, it seems like they would have, come to sort of a party consensus before speaking in public about it.
The problem is that it's not the way those parties work. They are always one-person party. Jean-Marie Le Pen, Marine Le Pen, they've always purged anyone who was dissenting. And they've always chosen the hair, no? Bruno Maigret, Florian Philippot, but every time the hair sort of disappeared from all the pictures after the first debate between them. So this time she has chosen the hair, but it's a judge who will decide if the hair is running or not. And the hair, to exist, it must have a personality. It cannot just be the hair of Marine Le Pen. So he has made some very, very visible steps. Some may look a bit anodyne, but he did a lot of public relations those days, trying to publicize his relationship with a rich Italian heiress. So trying to put himself in a story of those glossy magazines, but also clearly in terms of political divide, this is a moment when he tried to affirm a different shade of populist right, and it's a very, very open question whether the French are willing to follow this one.
May 1st also tends to be a pretty politicized holiday here in France. The figures you've just been speaking of from the far-right national rally, Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella are holding a rally in the eastern city of Macron, north of Lyon today. What do you make of that? What can we expect to see from that? And then are there any other sort of political issues we should be keeping an eye on?
So traditionally, there was a Jeanne d'Arc rally in party by Jean-Marie Le Pen, the father, which was the counterpoint to the much larger left-wing rallies. So this Macron event is a moment where normally they will show some form of reunification and try to put themselves on the foot of future presidents, but you don't expect this rally to be bigger than all the left-wing ones. The left-wing ones are not as big as 10 or 20 years ago, but this is still the moment where they all gather together, and before a presidential election, they say, oh, what about uniting before the presidential election? Because you may remember that in the previous two presidential elections, there was no left-wing candidate in the second round. It's been center-right versus far-right every single time. And the main reason for that is that they've been divided candidacy with one very, very strong from Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who is on the far left, has exactly zero chance of ever winning a second round, but has a very strong core of around 10% voter. So what do you want to look for this time is, are they going to find somehow someone on the left who is popular enough to run a campaign that can reach the second round? If they would ever reach a second round, a social democrat could have a chance against the far right. But they have at the moment zero chance because Mélenchon will be running a separate candidacy event, and the other one, they will have long chats. Perhaps they will find a unity candidate among them. Most likely they will run 3-4 different candidates. Each of them will get 5%. And paradoxically, when all the debates today are about the unity of the left-wing ideas of France, work being a sacred right of the worker to choose when they want to work, how much they get paid, perhaps paradoxically, that's never been so irrelevant in politics right now.
Yeah, would you say that we're seeing less anger directed at Emmanuel Macron himself now that he's on his way out of office? I mean, he only has a year to go.
Macron is doing what the French allow him to do, which is international relations. Macron has always been very visible on European issues, on international matters. He does that quite well. Surprisingly, if you look at opinion polls, he's very popular everywhere in Europe, except for France. And I think it's because the French hate the way he managed domestic politics. Now the Prime Minister Le Cornu has been chosen specifically for one thing, not to offend anyone, and not to have any kind of break of government before the presidential election, meaning that he's doing exactly nothing. And it's very hard to be angry at someone who is doing nothing and at someone who is going to depart very soon. But no, the truth is that in 2027, so just after the next 1st of May, there will be a new president. And this new president will inherit all the decisions that have been postponed, starting again by the pension reform. So the next president will have a choice between doing something on their own agenda, so they will have things they want to achieve, or fulfilling the promise they almost all made to cancel the pension reform. This will be tough. This will be a new era, and I think it's very likely that whoever gets in charge now, because all the hard choices have been postponed, whoever is in charge next year will be immediately highly unpopular, just like Macron is at the moment.
It ensures that next year's May Day is going to be a lively one, although perhaps today's as well. We'll have to wait and see. Renaud Foucart, thank you again so much for your analysis this morning. That's Renaud Foucart, a senior lecturer in economics at Lancaster University Management School.